Action!
Hi, and welcome to the Grudge Report featuring the Expanse. I'm Margaret Reeb of the SETI Institute, and I am joined as always by Franck Marchis, who is a senior astronomer at the SETI Institute and chief science officer at Unistellar. And by the way, Unistellar just announced a brand new telescope. You should go check it out. But since you're here, first let's talk about the Expanse. In this series, we talk about the Expanse, sometimes about the characters, mostly about the science. And we have been going through season 4. So today we're going to talk about season 4, episode 9, almost the last episode of the season. This episode is called Saeculum, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff that happens. So if you aren't caught up on the Expanse to this episode, go get caught up and come on back because we are going to spoil everything. So, Franck, you pointed out before we started recording that this episode only touches on Ilus. There's so much going on. This is sort of the climax of the season, I suppose, and we get 55 or, just less than an hour on this new planet, and a lot of stuff is happening. But let's talk about what's going on in orbit before we get to what's going on the planet. What's happening up above?
You do remember that the Rocinante and Barb and the other spaceship from the RCE are basically unable to use their propulsion system, the fission reactor one, the Epstein drive. So they are basically slowly decay, having an orbit that slowly drop because of friction due to the atmosphere. And the Rocinante is trying to save the Barb by tethering it, basically, there's a gigantic cable that they connected the two spaceship, and the Rocinante is using another type of propulsion system, an electrical thruster, they call them, I think, to move and to drag the Barb up.
Yes, so they're trying to save the barbacola, right? That is weighed down by all of the resources the Belters have harvested from the planet. And that's a big question in the episode, right? Is do they dump all their future and all this money that they have harvested from the planet? Because that would help them. And then on the planet, they're trying to figure out what's going on and maybe what even happened to their thrusters on their ship, right?
Yeah. So the interesting science here is the difference between the Epstein drive and the thrusters. So in this episode, they multiple times mentioned some issue, the electrical system. They're basically running with batteries, multiple one, and they need those batteries to activate the thrusters. So my interpretation is that what we have here is an electric propulsion system. That's different than what we see when we launch a rocket. You have a chemical propulsion system, okay, oxygen and hydrogen explosion. It's very high G, very energetic. But when you go to space, you don't have to use those. You can basically use this electrical propulsion system, which produce a momentum slowly. So how do they work? Well, they simply use electricity coming from solar panels or nuclear reactors, and a material. It could be a gas, it could be a liquid, which is ionized. Then there is this electrical system that accelerates these ions, so these electrons, and that's basically produce a thrust. The thrust is very small. Probably if you put your hands in front of it, you will not even feel anything. But because you're in space where there is no friction, this accelerates slowly but continuously the spacecraft. And it's a very interesting propulsion system that we started using quite recently to explore asteroids. NASA has sent a Dawn mission that explores Ceres and Vesta using a plasma propulsion system that I just described. I think the gas in this case was neon or xenon. One of them, I forgot. Someone's going to correct me, I'm sure.
Yes, in the comments, let us know for sure.
And then I discovered last week, in fact, that NASA is developing a much more ambitious propulsion system called PPE, power and propulsion element. And this is for the gateway. So you know what the gateway is?
No, tell me.
Nothing to do with the Stargate gateway.
I was going to say, have you discovered a ring gate? That would be cool.
So the gateway is a small orbital station that will orbit the Earth's moon system. And this gateway will be inhabited by a human. And it will be kind of the link between the surface of the moon and Earth. So the idea will be that we launch a rocket from Earth when the gateway is not too far away from Earth. The human goes there, and then they stay in the gateway until they reach the moon and maybe land on the moon or control spacecraft remotely on the moon using the fact that they're close to the moon. This gateway is a very ambitious project. To control the gateway, to be able to adjust the orbit, we will need a propulsion system, and they are planning to use the same kind of electrical propulsion system that I just described. It will be much more powerful. That's all.
So it seems like it takes a lot of energy to get off a planet because of atmosphere, like specifically Earth. Let's talk about that. But then once you get into space and you're in a frictionless environment, just a little bit of oomph or propulsion, whichever word you want to use, is going to adjust your trajectory. Is that accurate? Is that kind of the idea?
So it's difficult to leave a planet because of the gravitational well.
Oh, yeah. Gravity. There's that too.
Yes. And then as soon you're out of the gravity, and you are outside in space, there is no friction because there is no atmosphere. So you can use this kind of propulsion system to drift away from the planet and start exploring the solar system. You can also use solar cell, for instance, another technique which is not mentioned here. In this case, you deploy a gigantic cell, and you use the photons coming from the sun to move you slowly toward the direction you want to go.
Solar wind, right?
Yeah, solar wind.
Yes. Well, I had not heard about that plan from NASA. That's really cool. Awesome. Well, I think there's something else going on in orbit that we wanted to talk about, right? Was it when poor Lucia falls out of the Rocinante and Naomi has to go save her?
Yeah, that's another
terrifying
scene of the Expanse. I think this is also a great scene. So she's ejected in space because of the first Newton law. You will basically get a constant speed, and you drift away. An
object in motion stays in motion.
Exactly.
Did I pass?
You passed. And so this first motion law happened in space, and in this case, Lucia have this issue. She's also spinning on herself, by the way, which complicates significantly the problem. So what we have Naomi ejecting herself, pushing herself away from the Rocinante, but she has a cable. She's connected to the Rocinante with this tiny cable, and she tried to catch her. So one thing is that because she managed to catch her, it implies that the speed at which she jumped out of the spaceship is faster than the speed at which Lucia got ejected from the spaceship, which I don't think
she catches up, right?
Sorry?
Because she catches up. She's not just moving in.
Yes. Because she has no propulsion system. Naomi has no propulsion system. So basically the speed she ejected herself is the same speed she reached Lucia. So if she reached Lucia, it means that she has a speed which is superior to the speed of Lucia at the beginning. And that's weird, because Lucia got ejected by an impact with an object and so on. So let's forget that. But then Lucia is spinning, and we have Naomi coming and grabbing her, right?
Yes.
Logically, if that's the science was right here, what happened is that when Naomi reached her, she also brings some momentum. Okay?
So they would speed up.
Two bodies together, we start spinning even faster in space. And that's not what we see. Okay? I think that would have been kind of a sad part, because she have been basically rolled into a cable that would not have been pretty. So
no.
This this scene, it's beautiful, but it's not scientifically accurate in my mind. I may be wrong, but I've been thinking about this all night, so please correct me.
Franck was like lying in bed trying to do some calculations. He found Newton.
So yeah.
Yes,
so
I mean it is. Yes, scientifically accurate or not, it's a terrifying scene because poor Lucia acts like I would in this situation, which she begins to hyperventilate and is very terrified.
Yeah, because she knows that she will, if nobody catches her, she will drift like this in space forever
until she dies. Yeah, and then continuing
spinning
long
with some
after.
speed. And then when she will be completely in space, far away from the spacecraft, she will have absolutely no point of reference. So you're basically spinning without knowing exactly what's happening.
There's no up or down, side or left or right.
No direction, nothing. You're just like floating in space, and that's all.
Yes.
Yeah, not a pretty way of dying, definitely.
No, and we should mention that the impact, I believe, was a light shuttle from the Edward Israel that was firing on the Rocinante. So a scuffle has broken out finally amongst our groups on Ilus. Was there anything else in orbit?
The way they basically get toward the end, you remember? So after the impact of the debris fall onto the Rocinante is basically losing energy propulsion system. There is no more this thruster that I mentioned. They cannot use them because they have almost no batteries or something. I forgot the details, but they got an idea, and the idea is kind of smart: is to fire the weapon of the Rocinante in the opposite direction of the motion. And in this case, they use the Newton's third law, the law of action and reaction. When the weapon is being fired, the Rocinante will move with the force which is exactly equal to the force that was used to send to move the weapon, the projectile in the weapon. Okay, so that's
for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Exactly. So if you
put the book
you're good today. Today you're good. If you put the book on the table, the book applies a force on the table, but there is also a force applied by the table on the book. Okay, so the book stays immobile, doesn't move. So the same happened here, but because you're in space, the spaceship is ejected in the opposite direction of the projectile, and carry with it basically the barb, and manage to reach an orbit which is safer for the barb. Not the best one, but it's higher, so there is less friction. So they know they will be able to survive in this orbit for, I think he said 10, 20 days or something like this in the show.
Something longer than before, right? So they have expended energy, but they were able to adjust. That's a very smart idea. Yes.
And they will basically probably take the time to fix the Rocinante and hopefully the thruster systems to be able to stabilize the spaceship. They also mentioned the spaceship is spinning on itself, because when they don't have those thrusters, they cannot basically compensate for this motion. So the spaceship is spinning. But that's I think that was a cool scene. I love that. I love this part of the movie.
Yes. And it would complicate space battles, I assume. And if you know,
it makes me think about that too.
Yeah.
Because every time we see the spaceship and the projectile being ejected and so on, you need to think that there is on the spaceship that used this weapon something that to compensate for from the ejection of this projectile. So the thruster may be used as well. I mean, it's a very complicated problem.
Yeah, and you'd probably have to calculate what your enemy's projectiles would do to their trajectory, right? Mm-hmm. To keep engaged with them. And it becomes very complicated, but it's very interesting. And I'm glad the Rossi has some more time as well as the Barbacola. But there's something that happens on the planet that is also a very good example of one of Newton's law, is it not?
Yes, that's the purple field, I call it.
The purple.
That's why I decided to put the purple on me today.
Yes. Franck and I also color coordinated just for everybody. We're not purple, but green. So just a quick orientation on what's going on Ilus. Both the RCE and everyone affiliated with them. So the Earth folks, the Rossi crew, and the Belters who've gone through the Rain Gate and attempted to colonize the planet. They're all in an old alien structure, a ruin, because there was some crazy flooding and tsunami on the planet. They've managed to get past an ocular parasite that was causing all of them to go blind for the past couple of episodes. But the waters are receding. Everybody's getting ready to kind of leave the ruins potentially, though they don't have food, and a scuffle breaks out. But also, while that's happening, Holden is visited by his Miller projection, hologram, or actual entity. We aren't sure. And the entity leads him deeper into the ruins through this really trippy and cool purple gate. Deeper into the ruins, I'm guessing, but it seems like he's falling and moving and some odd things are happening. So Franck, what's scientifically going on here?
So the good Miller, because there is two Miller in the story, and that's what he's explaining. This one is the Miller that wants to help him, basically tell him to jump into this hole, and there is this weird field. And Holden, because he has 100% trust on this guy, basically jump. And this is a hole, okay? And you can see him falling. You can see the panic in his face when he's falling, but then he's coming down because you can see that he's not accelerating. And you see that in the scene of when he looks at the wall, I think, there is walls or something, and you can see this goes at the same speed all the time. So he's basically falling into the center of the planet or some kind of structure deep in the planet, but he's not accelerating, which is weird, because remember that when you're falling, based on the second Newton law, the force applying to you is equal to the mass multiplied by the acceleration. And the acceleration in this case is the gravity of the planet. So it means that there is a force applying on yourself, so you're getting faster and faster and faster. But it's not the case here, probably because this anti-gravitation field, the purple field, has some kind of a way to compensate for this, somehow creating a force that push Holden up while the gravity is pushing him down. And I know it looks like science fiction, but the people who build those structures, they are capable of turning off fundamental physics, like the spaceship, the Epstein drive of the spaceship. So I think they're totally capable of creating an anti-gravitation field, such as it's an elevator, basically, or then fall in the center of the structure, far away, because it takes quite a long time for him to reach the surface, to reach the end. And when he reached the end, there is a magical moment where basically the field probably try to even decelerate him, so slowing him down by pushing it upward with this force. And then he turns and he gets out of the field at a speed which is close to zero, very comfortable.
It just lays him down very nicely.
Exactly. And all of this thanks to Newton's laws. It's amazing. So look, there is something I found here. So, you know, behind me is book sometimes, and there is one book which is just below this one that I remove, and look where it is.
There you go. Did you flip through that before this episode?
Yes. Yeah. I love this book. It's one of the books that, this is the third edition of Principia by Isaac Newton, Sir Isaac Newton. And it's basically the book that he wrote, and the first page are the three laws.
There you go.
Expressed by Newton himself. They're slightly different to the way we say them. There's the same principle, but the way he says it is different because that was a different century, of course. But yeah, yes. This episode is full of reference to the Newton laws, in fact. And it's remarkable that Newton came with those laws, and they were used all the way until mid 1950, basically, until we get the general relativity, and quantum mechanics. We were using only those laws. Those laws, the fundamental three laws, help us to build rockets, cars, propulsion system, I mean, they have been part of the Industrial Revolution.
Yes. Yeah. And we still use them. We just have other rules that we also think about depending on scales and where you are in the universe and what other forces may be applied.
Because science is always, every law, every theory is an approximation of the reality. And that's extremely important to understand that. In physics, we don't say that the Newton laws are real or are right or wrong. They are a good approximation of what we are seeing. And then one day, with someone else come, Albert Einstein in this case, for instance, for the general relativity, and he proposed a new law, which is more accurate than the Newton laws for a specific type of environment, which is in the case space, the structure of space, and the way particles behave at high speed, for instance. So that's the reason. That's why we should never say that I believe in science. I say you should basically say I accept the way science see the reality right now, but then in the future it will change. We know that. And we should.
That doesn't fit on a bumper sticker, though, Franck. I can't put it on a poster.
Not for science, you should not say. But that's another topic of conversation.
Yes. No, but you're right. I mean, it's good to be accurate, and it's good to know that things are always evolving. Our understanding in how we live our lives and how evolutions in thought and society come along, all those change all the time. They build on one another and continue to refine each other, which is very interesting. But it's also very interesting how certain laws or concepts stay around for a really, really
long time. Yeah.
Yes.
And you still study them at school.
Yes. We all have copies of Principia on our desk. Well, let's talk about other things going on in Ilus, because there's so much lore to get into, so many rather confusing things happening with different aliens and different millers and different portals. But I think let's spend some time talking about what's going on between all of the factions inside this alien structure. And I guess even in orbit, because Mutri, I can't pronounce his name for some reason. Marchis. I'm sorry, I will keep trying. He wants to wage war on everybody who is not part of RCE, which is the Royal, or we just looked this up. It's an energy company.
Royal Charter Energy.
He wants to kind of wipe everybody off of Ilus who is not a part of his crew, because he wants to stake claim. He wants to make money off of the resources of this planet. And he and Holden get in a very interesting discussion about society and colonization. It's interesting. And of course, Dr. Okoye, who's the scientist who saved everybody from the ocular parasite, she's also there on behalf of this company. So there's a lot of interesting layers going on. Do you have any comments, Franck, or a place to start with this conflict?
I have a ton of comment on this scene. This scene is a very interesting scene. The conversation between Marchis and Holden. So Marchis is totally the threatening idiot of the show. We know that, and you can see how the character change over time. First, he's a pure military guy, but then he reveals his real intention. His real intention is to be kind of the boss, the ruler of the planet. He said this specifically in this show, "Did you break my planet yet?" or something like that. He said, "My planet," to Holden. So he really thinks that he's coming here to take over this planet for the RCE, on behalf of the RCE, and he will be the ruler. So everybody who's going to be against him should be killed, executed, or sent back to somewhere else, basically. So in this conversation, Marchis also revealed that his vision of colonizing New World, or settling on New World, to use a more neutral word, is basically for him, what we need to do to settle on this planet is exactly what we did in the past to settle on the American continent. We'll go there, he make references to, we built post office and trains and wiped out everybody which is against us. And then we open to civilized people like you, Holden, because he thinks that Holden is basically someone who should arrive after this has been done, after the planet,
the dirty work.
the dirty work has been done, and he's the guy who's going to do the dirty work. Yeah. And I love the answer of Alden. We told him, I met I met a guy who liked using past genocide to justify his BS. I said, well, he doesn't say BS, but he said the real word. And I think that's a bit what the kind of situation we have from time to the kind of conversation we have at the moment. A lot of space exploration is starting to face that as well. We're not yet on Mars or yet on the moon, but it's gonna come. It's gonna come very quickly that some private companies will basically decide that this piece of Mars or moon belong to them, and we will have the same kind of discussion or conflicts between the one who want to change the way we settle on the planet and the one who want to repeat history again.
Yes, I mean, in this episode also, we're filming a couple of days after the first or the largest civilian space flight, correct? They're in orbit right now. Yeah. I know they're not settling anything, but as you say, I think space travel and boots on certain celestial bodies will come before too long. And it is, it's a very interesting character discussion between Marchis, who I feel like is a little bit of a caricature. Some of the stuff that he says is a little outlandish, but maybe that's just my naivete. I did appreciate how Holden had a couple good comebacks, and he even said, I'm going to take you back and you're going to stand trial because we are a civilized society. I thought it's a debate that we see a lot, but not necessarily applied to space.
So, and one of the reasons this debate is important to me is because as a scientist who is interested in space exploration, I know that one day or another, I will have to take a stand on this. And this is happening in the show as well. We have the RCE, which has this military, private military, I forgot how you call that, and then we have the scientists and people who work for the RCE. And those don't agree with the way the things are going. And that's one of the reasons one of the scientists basically sent a message to the Rocinante to warn them about the shuttle. That's the reason Dr. Okeye also tried to warn the people on Ilus. So they're taking a side. And maybe one day some of the scientists will have to take those sides when we will be exploring the moon and Mars, reminding the people that we are civilized.
Yes, I do think, though, I love The Expanse. People can come at me in the comments. I do think that this was it was very clear which side you could be on, because let's hope that when we get to the era of space colonizations, we don't have one side saying they should wipe out the other folks that happen to be on the same planet as them or moon. I think it makes it quite easy to say, he's clearly a psychopath. He wants to kill everyone. I don't want to be on that side. But there's also the debate of how do we use Mars? Is it okay for a private company to go there and start harvesting its resources? Or should it all be there for study? How much do we owe to, if we find a microbe there, can we destroy it? And so that's where the debate for me becomes very thorny. I am anti wiping out people for no reason other than your own greed. That's terrible, or really any reason. But when it comes to these more nuanced discussions of, what do you think, Franck? Do you think that we should be drilling into Mars, looking for oil or whatever, heavy metals, whatever else we may find there, or should it be preserved?
It doesn't really matter what I think, because I know that one day or another we are going to go to Mars and we are going to explore this planet with human beings. Okay, right. So it's going to happen. What we need to make sure is that we don't do it such as we destroy every interesting science or on Mars before doing that. And I don't have a solution for that, frankly. Because as soon as we're going to go on Mars, we are going to contaminate the planet, definitely. But don't forget, there is a connection between the two worlds. It did happen for 4 billion years. Okay, we have pieces of Mars coming to us and pieces of Earth coming to Mars. So probably the life on Mars is not fundamentally different to the life we have on Earth. So that's one of the reasons I don't think we should consider that Mars should be isolated completely until we explore it fully and detect and find all the life, because there is probably already some relationship between this life on Mars and the life on Earth. If one day we go to dig into the ocean of Europa or Enceladus, I will be more careful, definitely, because the life there will be extremely different than the life we have on Mars. So, my mind, Mars is our backyard, and it's gonna happen. We cannot stop this. So, you have the answer to your question for me.
There you go. Great. But it is it's going to be interesting to see how the different countries and companies of Earth arbitrate who gets what, who gets to go where. There's not a lot of thought on that as far as I can tell, but you would know. No.
There is no thought on that. And the Starlink debate that we have at the moment is basically because we had no thought on that. We can condemn SpaceX for doing something, but they're not doing something illegal. Right. We have a new area which is extremely interesting for human beings, for technology, etc. They have an access to it. Yeah, they're launching all those satellites to do communication. And there is no law, so they can do it. There is no reason for them not to do it. In fact, they follow the procedure, apparently. Not to all the details, but they did follow the procedure. Then we realize now the impact it may have on professional astronomers in ground-based astronomy, but it's too late.
Right.
And this is going to happen probably on Mars. It's going to be too late. The day we're going to realize there is human on Mars and they're contaminating the soil and the water, done.
There is a very good show that I will plug. The last time I checked, it was on some streaming services that are very popular for free. And I'm curious if you saw it, Franck. I think it's just called Mars, and yes. It was by the National Geographic Channel. Mm-hmm. Have you seen that show?
I wanted us to do a Grudge report on it when I was.
We could, because it's talking about all of this. It's essentially splicing real life things that happen with two fictional entities that end up on Mars. One is very science-based. I think it might be funded by a governmental organization, and the other one is a private company. And there's some of these debates and things that we're talking about are played out in a very interesting way on Mars. So highly recommend it.
You remember the scene where the scientist found life? She found some microbes, and she's being asked to hide this evidence by the mining company,
so that they can continue to mine. Because as soon as if she were to broadcast her finding, they would have to stop work and they wouldn't be making money. So there's a lot of interesting things that happen in that show that I think the Expanse touches on as well. And then we have to talk about one last thing that happened. Amos and Chandra, the love plot that would never be. I thought it was a very Amos move to tell his girlfriend to stay out of his business, and then they ended up having a mortal battle. He's one character that has stayed. He's not done anything out of character, and his character is very interesting. I know you're an Amos fan, so do you have commentary on that, Franck?
No, I was expecting that from him. He has this very interesting way of separating emotion to action that most human beings can do. But Amos has no problem in this. It's kind of, we see that in the next season, in fact, a lot, how he can function with separating both, like if he has two personalities, in fact. But I was not, that's all I will say about this scene. It's not really science, but
it's not science, Franck, but it's interesting. I guess it could be psychiatry. It's just not a science.
Yeah, but not,
we
really
talk
not
about.
nice. Really not nice.
Not your cup of tea. Well, is there anything else?
Yeah, let's just briefly mention that we are going to talk about this awakening of the planet in the next episode. because a lot is happening, but most of the explanation will come in the next episode. So we're keeping that for the next one. But those scenes are absolutely amazing when you can see this blue connection network happening. One thing I understood from this episode is that the planet is fully artificial somehow. It has been completely digged out, and there is structure inside. You remember I mentioned at the beginning of the show that I was expecting it. In fact, that's really what happened. And for good reasons, probably, by this alien civilization. We will find out probably next episode or reading the books why Ilus is like that.
Yes. And we need to talk about what happens with Miller, what happens with Dr. Okoye. There's a whole lot of stuff to get into next episode, which will wrap up our discussion of season 4.
Yep. And we try to do it next week, if I remember.
Yes, we will try and do it next week. I think we're also going to be talking about The Foundation, which is another show that's premiering based on a very popular series of books by Isaac Asimov. So you have that to look forward to as well. I am excited to get into that. I think there's a lot of really interesting things that happen in that show, or the book, I should say, that I'm not sure how they're going to translate to a show. So we shall see. But thank you, Franck, for joining me, spending this day talking about The Expanse. And thank you for tuning in. We are the Grudge Report, and we are a product of the SETI Institute. The SETI Institute is a nonprofit organization that is interested in understanding the prevalence and nature of life in the universe. We do astrobiology and SETI, and I will say that there isn't a lot of federal funding for SETI. So if you like talking about aliens, if you like thinking about aliens, please donate. And you can do so via the links below. And also subscribe so you get notified when we have a new episode of the Grudge Report, because we love making this. And thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you next time.
Bye-bye.